Okay, so we're going to create some emojis. And the first thing I did was went online and found some pictures for my set of art that I'd like to create. So I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I found these photos online and just took screenshots. And these are just going to be used for reference. When I'm placing them in the file, you'll notice that there is a blue X on these images. And if I don't leave these items on my desktop or have access to them elsewise, when I open the file, they can potentially disappear. So what I want to do is go up to the top here and hit embed while those items are selected, and you notice those blue lines are gone now. So these files are embedded into the file and they won't get lost if you go open the file later. So when I look at these emojis on the bottom here, they're consistently round in shape, and because I want to do a set, I want to keep them consistently round. And because I'm working in vector, I can just start and draw this at any size and then make it smaller or larger. So I'll start by making a circle. I'm going to change my fill to nothing and my stroke to here. So I'm going to start with R2 because I think this would be easy to translate. So I can take this image and I can lock it. I'm locking the selection so that when I draw on top of it or I try to move it, it won't allow me to. So why that it's important is because a lot of times you're drawing and images and items can go behind objects, they can slide away. This way, it's just locked in place. So I'm going to take my circle and go over R2's head, and that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to zoom in, and there's a couple ways you can zoom in. You can use the Control plus on your keyboard, minus with Control will zoom out, and you can also use the little zoom tool. So if you're using the zoom tool, you select the tool. As you select and pull, it's going to go bring this in, and then as you move your mouse up, it'll zoom out. So you can try that. I think you can go left and right too. And this is really important because when you're working, you'll have lines that overcross each other, and you need to get in really close to see where your anchor points are and where lines end. So using the keyboard, I'm hitting Control minus, and that takes you in and out in increments. Another handy trick is the little hand here, and if you select that and hold your spacebar, you can move your image around. And why that's important is when I'm zoomed in, if I want to move over just a little bit, I can just move left and right, and makes things easier. So I'm going to adjust the circle. And what I like to do as I'm drawing is lock things in place, so it's just less confusing for me. But there's some things that I like to do as well that I can show you to make things easier too. So let's just start drawing things in along the way. Now this has got a black outline, and this is hard to see. So one of the things I like to do is change a color to something bright so that I can see it as I'm drawing. And some people were having some issues with filling in objects because they weren't drawing them with spaces between, and they weren't closing objects. So you want to make sure you close those objects, adjusting along the way. And then there's little things that you can do, because these shapes are pretty much the same on each side. I can copy this with Control C, Control V to paste it. And then I can go into my reflect tool, double click, and I'm holding shift, and I drag to the right and it flipped it. The other thing you can do is just double click, just hit copy, paste, and then double click this, and it'll give you options for your angle. And as I did this, this is automatically set to 90. It flipped it to the other side. So there's just several different ways you can do things in Illustrator. So I'm using my pen tool to draw out these shapes. And if I miss some of the points along the way and I need to adjust, I'll just go back in and adjust. It's not a big deal. So there's a little bit of a curvature on these angles. You want to pay attention to those curves. And when you have things that are more straightforward, just go ahead and use those tools. The rectangles, the circles. And to make perfect circle, hold that shift to constrain it. I'll copy and paste just to do things quick. And these are all little tricks I can do along the way just to make things easier. Another way that you can make things curved is if I draw out, say, a rectangle here, and I want to curve this, I can use the arch or arc tool. And I go into this, you'll see that the top arched out because it says arch, right? So I'm going to set this back to 0 and switch this to vertical. Now it's going to shift this direction, right? So as you're drawing things out, you can get perfect shapes by using these tools. Just play around with them. You get some trapezoids, different tools of this nature. You can always think of things in the form of shapes as well. If you need to shift to do a trapezoid, try to remember where that trapezoid is, or the shear tool. So if I select this, I'm holding shift and I'm dragging my mouse, it's going to shift it. Gets a little crazy, but if you do it real slow, it will adjust and you will be good. So on this, it has actually a little curve to it. And I'll also show you the Pathfinder tool. So I can draw and use other shapes to knock things out as I'm drawing them. And I'll show you what I mean. I just want this angle to be a little bit less. Right. So I've got two shapes here. This rectangle and this ellipse, which is in front of it. So if I go and I go to my Pathfinder, you'll see Unite. So if I select this, hold Shift, and select the other piece, and hit Unite, it's going to unite these two pieces together. The tool I like to use is minus front, and what that did was just knock out that front shape. So now I have this nice smooth curve here. And a lot of the reason that I'll do that is because if I go and I draw this, these curves might not be the cleanest looking curve. I've drawn in Illustrator for a long time, so I can make pretty clean curves, but a lot of times if you're starting out, it just takes time to do that, right? So I'm just giving you options to learn and play with along the way. So I'm clicking, dragging my points. And again, I can go back in later to adjust. Sometimes what I like to do is click things like this, and this is where I'll use the eraser tool. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So I'm using Shift just to go create a straight line across the top and kind of trim those up so they're all the same size. I can do this along the bottom as well. And then I can start filling in some colors, right? So we know that R2 has these blue details. I can use the eyedropper tool. This blue in the middle here is pretty nice, so I'm going to select that, and that fills in these shapes with this specific blue. Something else you can do is save your color selection. So when I use that eyedropper tool, this color comes up here in my swatch palette. If I take this color, drag it, and bring it down, this color is going to be saved. So now as I'm working along and I want to go back in and fill things, that color is saved. Okay. Now on these emojis, there's not a ton of detail in here. There's some little bit of shading for like the cheeks in here. There's a little bit of highlights. There's some highlights in here. So you can decide what the amount of detail is that you want to put in there. And then just keep on drawing them. The big thing with these is you want to make sure that everything is looking consistent between the characters in your set. You know, whether maybe it's something from Harry Potter or the Avengers or Star Wars or whatever it may be. Just work on it and